All right, let's jump into this deep dive. Minerva and Brian. We're taking you straight to Valladolid, Yucatan, and we've got a ton of travel articles. A few Wikipedia pages, too, just so you're totally in the know before you even touch down.
Sounds like fun. Where should we start?
Let's do a little time travel. First things first, Valladolid's history. What do we know?
Well, first off, this city's got some serious years on it. Founded in 1543, named after a city in Spain. But here's the kicker. It's actually built right on top of a Mayan town called Zassi.
No way. Zassi. That means White Hawk, right?
You got it. And speaking of Zassi, get this. The Cathedral of San Servasio, it actually faces north. Super unusual for Yucatan. Did the Mayans have something to do with that, I wonder?
It's possible, right? I mean, we know they were there first. Maybe they had some kind of symbolic thing going on with the whole White Hawk North direction thing.
Yeah, well, the sources don't exactly say. But we do know that the original cathedral, it was destroyed after a revolt. Back in 1705, when they rebuilt it, they went with the north-facing design. Who knows why? Maybe it was just easier. Maybe it was symbolic. Either way, it's a little mystery. Makes you think.
Totally. And speaking of revolts, Valladolid played a pretty big part in the Caste War, right? Back in the 19th century.
Huge part. You're talking 1848 Mayan rebels. They actually sacked Valladolid. It was a wild time. Really shows you the tension that was there between the Mayans and the European colonizers. I mean, that tension's still around in a lot of ways, but Valladolid, they rebuilt, bounced right back. That's kind of the vibe you get when you're there. It's resilient.
I like that. City with a backbone. So once Minerva and Brian have soaked up all that history, where should they go? What can't they miss?
Oh, man. So many options, but Parque Francisco Canson for sure. Imagine this, Minerva and Brian Sunset Churros, Marquesitas colonial buildings all lit up. It's magic.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, what about museums? Any art lovers out there?
Casa de los Venados, absolutely. It's a restore house from the 1600s. Think over 3,000 pieces of Mexican folk art.
Whoa!
Talk about a visual feast. Minerva and Brian, you've got to see this place.
3,000 pieces. That's wild. Okay, this one's cool. Minerva and Brian. There's a cenote right in town.
Cenote Zassi. No kidding.
Yeah.
Can't get more convenient than that. And that name Zassi, remember that Mayan town we talked about? It all connects.
Right.
And pro tip for you guys, the restaurant above, Cenote Zassi, you spend 100 pesos there, you get free entry.
Deal. And you gotta be hungry after all that exploring. Speaking of which, what's next on our list?
We're heading a little bit outside the city center now, to the Convent de San Bernardino de Siena. Beautiful architecture, light and sound show, too.
Okay, now for something a little different, I was reading about this place called Hotel Zentik. It's got an underground saltwater cave.
Oh, yeah. And here's the connection.
Yeah.
You know how the cenotes have that amazing blue-green water? Well, the cave walls at Hotel Zendik, they're coated with chucum resin, the same stuff that gives the cenotes their color. It's all connected.
Wow, that's so cool. All right, before we go any further, we've got to talk food. Yucatecan food. What are Minerva and Brian absolutely ordering?
Saldutza panuchos cochinito pibil. Oh, and extabantum. It's a honey anise liqueur. You can thank me later.
Okay, so we've covered Valladolid, but day trips, it's Yucatan. We've got to mention Chichen Itza.
Of course. 45 minutes from Valladolid.
Yeah.
You're stepping back in time, Mayan civilization at its peak.
You guys book your tickets online. Skip the lines, you'll thank me later.
Good call. Now, while you're in that archaeological mood, Ekbellum, it's not as famous as Chichen Itza, but just as impressive.
Ikbellum. You can climb the Acropolis, see the tomb of Yucatán Lake Tiktok, 7,000 artifacts in there. It's incredible. And right nearby, there's Cenote Etzcanche. You can cool off after all that exploring.
Nice. And listen, if you want something totally different, there's Las Coloradas, the pink lagoons.
No way.
You can't swim in them. But the pictures.
No.
The pictures. Plus, you might even see some flamingos. January to September is the best time to spot them.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've got history, we've got culture, we've got nature.
Yeah.
And we've definitely got food.
Valladolid has it all. But Minerva and Brian, here's the thing. You can read all the articles in the world, but the best way to experience a place, like really experience it, you've got to talk to the locals. They'll tell you the stories you won't find in any guidebook.
Though true.
Okay, yeah.
Let's take a break, and then we'll dive into some more specifics.
Sounds good. I'm ready for more Yucatan. Okay, so we're back in Valladolid, and there's this street I think Minerva and Brian will love. It's called Calzada de los Frias.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. It's in that Que Hasar en Valladolid article. Super charming.
Totally charming. Picture this Minerva and Brian evening stroll. All these gorgeous colonial homes, vibrant colors, intricate detail. It's like stepping back in time.
I love it. And at the end of the street, boom, the Convent de San Bernardino de Siena.
Exactly. Perfect photo op.
Yep.
Okay, but we can't talk about Valladolid without talking about the markets, right? It's where the city comes alive.
Absolutely. Where should we
Right.
send them?
Mercado Municipal Donato Bates Herrera. It's a must. The colors, the smells, the sounds, it's everything you want in a market experience.
Sensory overload in the best way possible.
Oh.
But if Minerva and Brian are looking for something a little more curated, what about that Centro Regional de Artesanías Zací?
Oh, yeah. That's a great one. If you're into crafts, this is the place. Textiles, wood carvings, you name it. Plus, you're supporting local artisans.
Always a good thing.
Hmm.
Speaking of textiles,
Yeah.
the Wikipedia page mentioned something called huipiles. What are those exactly?
A huipil. It's a traditional Mayan tunic, usually embroidered with these amazing designs, and each region has its own style. It's like wearing a piece of history.
Wow, so it's not just fashion, it's a statement.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about street food, but what about restaurants? Are there any sit-down places we should mention?
Good point. What do the sources say?
Well, there are tons of options, from cheap eats to fancy places, but honestly, the food markets, they're some of the best places to eat in Valladolid.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Get the real deal there. Authentic Yucatecan food.
Exactly, food made with passion.
Okay, so Coach, you needed people. I'm not letting this one go. You described it earlier, and now I'm craving it.
It's that good. The pork is so tender, and the ashiota marinade, it gives it this incredible flavor and that color. It's amazing.
But I'm sold. And don't forget the Cacheata tune.
Of course. But speaking of drinks, the Wikipedia page mentions this other drink called balché. Have you heard of it?
Balché? No. What is that?
It's a traditional Mayan drink made from fermented honey and bark from the balché tree. It goes way back pre-Hispanic times. They used it in ceremonies and rituals.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, we've covered a lot in Valladolid, but let's talk about those day trips again. We've got Chichen Itza, Balam. What else is there?
Well, there's this place called Cenote Mayan Native Park. It's got the biggest vaulted cenote in Yucatan, but it's more than just a cenote. It's like an adventure park.
Okay, sold. What kind of adventures are we talking?
Rappelling zip lines, Mayan ceremonies. You can even see a traditional Mayan house and an organic garden.
Wow, so it's adventure plus culture plus nature.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about Las Coloradas, those pink lagoons.
All right, the picture is going to be amazing.
Totally Instagram worthy. Now, this one's a bit different. The Excopec Bee Park. Have you ever heard of it?
A bee park. That sounds really cool. Tell me more.
It's run by this family of beekeepers. They're all about preserving native bees, especially the Melipona bee. The Mayans considered it sacred.
Wow. So it's about bees, but it's also about preserving Mayan culture. What can you do there?
You can take tours, see the hives, taste different kinds of honey. They even have a dry cenote, and you can camp there too, tents and bungalows.
That sounds like a great experience. Okay, so the Valladolid, top 27 article. It mentions ecotourism, specifically community-based ecotourism.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing. These communities are sharing their culture and nature with visitors in a way that benefits everyone.
So where can Minerva and Brian check this out?
There's the Sosin birding trail. You can go bird watching, learn about crafts and food. Then there's Campamento Hidalgo. It's all about Mayan rituals and traditional medicine. And then there's Nuevo Durango. You can explore caves, even stay overnight in traditional Mayan huts.
That sounds amazing. Okay, back to history for a second. I was reading about the Plan de Delcup. It's called the first spark of the Mexican Revolution. And it happened right near Valladolid.
That's right, 1910, a group of revolutionaries. They met in Delcup just outside Valladolid, and they basically declared war on the dictatorship.
So Valladolid played a part in starting the Mexican Revolution.
In a way. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? It's amazing how much history is packed into this one little city.
Totally. Okay, so what's been the most interesting thing about Valladolid for you as we've been digging into these sources?
You know, it's the mix of Mayan and Spanish influences. It's everywhere. The buildings, the food, the language. It's like they created something totally new.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder, what happened to the original Mayan town Zací? After the Spanish came and built Valladolid, did they just erase it? Or is there still something there?
That's a good question. And honestly, the sources don't really say. They mention that some of the stones were reused in the Spanish buildings. But beyond that, it's a mystery.
A mystery. Maybe Minerva and Brian can solve it. Maybe they'll find some clues, some remnants of Zací.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Like uncovering a lost city.
Totally. Okay, I'm officially obsessed with Valladolid. It's not just a pretty city. It's a place with a story.
It definitely has a story. And the more you learn about it, the more fascinating it becomes.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what advice would you give Minerva and Brian as they head off on their Yucatan adventure?
Be open to the unexpected. Don't be afraid to go off the beaten path. Talk to the locals. Try new things. The best moments. They usually happen when you least expect them.
Love that advice. Okay, Minerva and Brian have the best time in Valladolid. We'll be back in a bit with more Yucatan insights. All right, Minerva and Brian, we've covered a lot, but let's get practical for a minute. How are you guys getting to Valladolid? You're flying into Cancun, right?
That's the plan. And from there, well, you've got options. You could rent a car, drive yourself. Takes about 2 hours on Highway 180D.
Road trip. Not a bad way to start the adventure.
Nope. But if you don't want to drive, no problem. There are tons of buses running between Cancun and Valladolid.
Okay. Which bus company should they take?
ADO is a good one. Reliable, takes a little over 2 hours, plus it's cheaper than renting a car, which is always a bonus.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So they get to Valladolid. How'd they get around?
But Valladolid's super walkable, especially the historic center. You can just wander around, discover all these hidden little spots.
I love that. But what if they want to go a bit further, like to the cenotes or Ekbalam?
Taxes are everywhere. But definitely agree on a price first, before you get in. Avoid any surprises. And a lot of people rent bikes too, which is super fun.
I can just picture them cruising through the Yucatan countryside, soaking it all in.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked a lot about cenotes. Any advice for experiencing them responsibly?
Oh, yeah, for sure. First off, cenotes are sacred to the Mayan people, so be respectful. Also, biodegradable sunscreen. Insect repellent, super important. You don't want to damage that ecosystem.
Right, protect those cenotes. And what about swimming safety? Any tips?
Some cenotes have life jackets. If you're not a strong swimmer, definitely grab one. And it's always a good idea to swim with a buddy, just in case.
Smart. Okay, money matters.
Yeah.
Are there ATMs in Valladolid?
Tons, especially in the city center. And the WikiVoyage article, it actually lists some banks that have low ATM fees. Bancoppel, Banco Azteca, Banamex.
Awesome. So Minerva and Brian, we've given you a ton of information, but this is just the beginning.
Exactly. The real fun starts when you get there. And explore for yourselves.
Embrace the unexpected, be open to new experiences, and most importantly, have an amazing time in Yucatan.
Safe travels, Minerva and Brian.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Valladolid. See you next time.